So, hello everyone. We are ready to start for this STEM Alliance and Scientix webinar, which is about STEM careers and skills of the future. The topic today is chemistry careers in the petrochemical industry. My name is Jessica Massini and I'm part of the communication team here at European Schoolnet. I will be moderating this session today. So, as you know, the webinar is recorded and it will be available on the STEM Alliance website very soon. I would like to welcome our two speakers of today, which are Petra Vanderstraeten, I hope to pronounce it correctly, and Daniel Bose, which are both from Huntsman. So thank you both for joining us in this session today. So let me just introduce you very briefly the structure of the webinar, of today's webinar. In the first part, I'm going to quickly talk about the Diversity in STEM campaign and the competition that we are still running under STEM Alliance. Then we will have the two speakers from Huntsman. You will have the chance to ask questions during the webinar, just posting your question on the chat, and my colleague Dimitra, who is here helping me, will collect the questions and we will answer. We will ask them to our speakers, and then we will ask you with two polls during the webinar. So let's start with the presentation of STEM Alliance. So this webinar, today's webinar is organized by Scientix, which is the community for science education in Europe, which I imagine you know about it, and STEM Alliance, who is a joint initiative that put together schools and industries in order to help STEM education in schools and to explore all the possible careers that schools can present to their students. STEM Alliance has three main actions in its project, which are the professional go back to schools, the teacher discovery placement, and the knowledge building and sharing. The STEM professionals go back to school is an initiative where professionals from STEM industries go and visit schools and make connection among teachers, schools, communities, and they try to bring professional experience into the classroom. The teacher placement initiative, those are professional experience for teachers in industry. So this can be, for example, an internship or different types of placement in a professional workplace. The aim of this is that teachers get to know more about what is happening in the STEM industries. And actually, we have published two publications that you can see now on the screen, which are available on the STEM Alliance website. The first one is about the best practices. So it is addressed to everyone who would like to organize a teacher placement, while the second one is a new one. We just published it, and it is a guide for companies who would like to set up a teacher placement. So don't miss them. And then the resources, which are for teachers, companies, and everyone who would like to get involved in this collaborative action. We have, for example, practices from industries that you can use as a lesson plan to organize an event, to engage your students and bring careers into the classroom. We also have the previous webinars, which are still available on our website, so you can just go on our website and check the topic that you are interested in. Then, the most important action the STEM Alliance is still running is the campaign Diversity in STEM. This campaign has been launched on the 24th of September and at the moment is running until the 13th of November. The aim of the campaign is to raise awareness about the importance of the diversity in STEM Diversity, it means not only diversity of gender, but it also means like social and economical background, like different careers in the classroom and beyond. And the aim is to tackle the stereotypes. So all the schools, teachers, career counselors, companies, and anyone else interested in STEM education are welcome to participate. So don't lose the chance to take part in it. The main action of the campaign is the competition, which now has a new deadline in order to allow all of you to take part in this competition. The new deadline is the 13th of November, and the aim is to showcase the best practices of diversity, inclusive representation of gender, economic and social background in the classroom. You can participate by organizing an activity or by submitting a career resource, or you can just do both. If you need more details about the campaign, you can click on the link that you can see here in this slide. So you will have all the information about the competition and how to be part in it. Then let's go back to today's topic. I hope that Daniel and Petra are online with us. So if they can share their camera, or at least Petra, who will be our first speaker. So Petra is responsible in Huntsman for identifying and guiding completion of key technology projects in EMEA, while Daniel works within Huntsman as part of a wider global talent function to promote the acquisition and development of talent across the business. But before leaving the floor to Petra, I would like you to reply, to give your answer to our poll, which my colleague Dimitra will share with you. So, okay, so which is the biggest issue you have faced in encouraging STEM studies in your classroom? Okay, so we are having the first answer. Okay, so okay, a few more minutes to vote. Okay. Okay, so as you can see in the results, the most voted is the low motivation from students due to lack of information about potential STEM careers in different sectors. While the second one is the lack of teaching resources that can motivate STEM studies, and the third one is the getting less confident student interested in STEM studies and careers. So I really hope that today's webinar will help you to find the way to encourage your students and to present some careers profile to your students so they can be more interested in the STEM careers. So, Petra, I'm leaving the floor to you.
Vanderstraeten. I work for Huntsman since 2005 now. I'm based in our European headquarters in Everberg, near Brussels in Belgium. So first I would like to give maybe a very brief introduction about what Huntsman is doing. And then later on I will talk a little bit about myself, how I got into a STEM education and about my career within Huntsman. So first a brief overview of Huntsman. So Huntsman is really a global chemical company. There are approximately 10,000 associates worldwide. Also different locations in 140 locations, and our headquarters is based in the Woodlands in Texas in the United States, and since 2005 we're also on the stock market. Then this is a little bit an overview about the global presence of Huntsman overall. So as you can see, it's mainly well concentrated in US, Canada, Europe and Asia Pacific, with approximately 1/3 of the employees based in each of those regions. We've got facilities in over 30 different countries. Now Huntsman itself is actually divided in 4 divisions, and all of these divisions have manufacturing locations, R&D locations, and also admin offices in all parts of the world. So me, myself, I work within performance products. So I would like to concentrate a little bit on performance products, introduce our products, and also how you can motivate students actually to choose a STEM career, to really relate the chemistry they do at school really to applications in the daily life. So if you look at our product range, so you can see a whole list of applications that performance products is active in. But most of these applications are really related to the daily life, and I think that's really an important aspect when you teach at school, to really the topics that you teach to relate them to the daily life. So for example, if you look at paint and inks, to make paint and to make inks you need pigments. Now traditionally those pigments you can't dissolve them. So you actually need to add additives, dispersing aid, to make them soluble in the medium you want to dissolve it in. So also for example, when you want to change a paint from solvent-based to water-based, which is more environment friendly, you also need to change that additive. So it's really, when you just look like daily life applications, like for example paints, it's really a nice example on how chemistry is needed in that. Another good example is actually foams. For example, when you look at sofas, some sofas the foam is really hard, other foams are really soft, and also that's actually involving chemistry, where you use similar types of building blocks but you make small modifications, and that's turning into a very hard foam or a very soft foam. For example, when you're teaching about surfactants, a really good example is just doing the dishes at home or cleaning. That's all about surfactants and dissolving the dirt actually into the water so that the dirt is removed. So I think for me that was actually really important, to relate chemistry to the daily life, and that also gives you an example of careers you can work into in the future. So now a little bit about myself. So I was born in Sint-Truiden in 1977, and I grew up in a very small village called Zepperen. And when I went to primary school and secondary school, that was actually in the village where I grew up. In secondary school, I studied Latin maths. It was actually quite a general education. I also had the option to study Latin language, like more modern languages, but also already when I was actually quite young, my interest was going more to engineering, and that's why I chose maths, because I was also paying attention to physics, chemistry. so more like a STEM education actually. Then when I finished my secondary school, I decided to do a bachelor's degree in chemistry. The reason for that, actually, I was interested in chemistry at school. I was quite good at it, and I also wanted to do something with my hands. And then when I was in the final year of my bachelor degree, I actually had the opportunity to go on an exchange program. So I went to Newcastle upon Tyne, and it's there that I finished my degree. And that placement actually was a project within organic synthesis, and it's actually then when I really got a bit passionate about organic synthesis, because it really gave me the feeling that I actually could create things. So at that time I'd actually finished my studies in Belgium, my bachelor degree, and then I had the opportunity to stay in Newcastle, so to continue my studies at the University of Northumbria, to do my master's degree really specific in organic chemistry. And then actually after that I also decided to do my PhD in organic chemistry, and that's what I did at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh, so also in the UK. And it's actually during the PhD where you learn to be more independent also. Obviously, you know, you get focused on really on the research, but you also have a certain independence. You learn about project management, so it's not only the chemistry you really have a deep dive into, but it's also more about your personal skills or the soft skills regarding project management, also working with other people, things like that. And then, so I studied then actually 5 years in the UK. And then I decided to go back home to look for a job. And it's in 2005 that I started within Huntsman as a research chemist. And that job was really most of my time, I would even say 80% of my time I spent in the lab doing organic synthesis, so really what I studied for. I really enjoyed that job because I was really doing the synthesis of the new products that Huntsman wanted to bring to the market. So it was, it was really R&D and creating something. In that job, I had a really close collaboration with the scientists who were actually testing the products into its actual application. So you could really see like why certain properties of a molecule were important for a certain application. And then when the product was successful and was going to be commercialized, it's at that stage that I would make contacts with the Huntsman plants to see if we could manufacture the product on large scale. So during that time I had a really good interaction actually between the application scientists, so to see how the product was used in certain applications, but also with the manufacturing sites and, for example, more people with an engineering background to bring the products to the plant. And then in 2008 I became a senior research scientist, and that actually meant that I was a team lead of 2 people. It was of the synthesis group, but in that role, obviously, I had more to do with project management, also people development, which was really interesting. But I also still spend a significant amount of my time in the lab, and it's also in that role that I actually felt more responsible, and you're being held accountable for how projects are moving. And then in 2015, I became the technical manager of Energy and Resources Department. And it's that actually when I more made a move from really the synthesis part to the application part, also learning like how our molecules were being used in the industry, what about our molecules was important for customers. So here, the main difference with my previous role was actually that there was also a lot more contact with customers outside the company. Before, my main contacts were within Huntsman, and in this role they were more external contacts. And that role, it was concentrated of the markets of oil field fuels and lubes. And then about 2 years ago, I became the senior technology manager. And that's actually the point where I actually moved out of the lab. I'm currently not really doing any lab work anymore. I'm responsible for the technology team based here in Everberg. And this role is actually more about making sure projects are progressed in the correct way, that we choose the correct projects to work on. I also work together more with functions I previously had less contact with, for example, finance department, supply chain. And at the moment I'm also being more involved when really business decisions have to be taken. Like, for example, the first 2 roles I was involved in was really science related, but here in this role now it's also that you look at the financial parts of things, and yeah, you get in contact with functions that are maybe not necessarily everybody has got a scientific background, let's say. So yes, that's a little bit about Huntsman, about my career path.
Many thanks, Petra. Okay, so any question from our teacher? You can post your questions on the chat, and my colleague Dimitra will collect them. I have a personal question, because actually I started with a scientific high school. It was scientific, but we had Latin, and I saw that you studied Latin before studying chemistry. So do you think that Latin helped you somehow in your career path or in your studies afterwards?
The language itself, it helps with certain abbreviations and terms that are being used, because you know the scientific name is quite often based on a Latin background, so it helps from that point of view. I think with the Latin, it's not only about the language, but it's also about interpretations and making connections. So from that point of view, I would say yes, that it helped, and I'm still actually pleased that I chose that direction. I know in Belgium, those types of studies, I think a number of students is declining, probably because people maybe don't see how it's directly, well, functional, maybe, let's say, I don't know, but I found it useful, and it makes you think, making connections, and yeah.
Yeah, maybe for the logic it helps a lot, because you can create logic connections, and then yeah. And how did you experience the international exchange program?
It was great, and I would actually advise everybody to do it, because I also, I mean, you know, I was nervous, but I also went on my own to Newcastle, so I really didn't know anybody there, so it was I was nervous, but it was a lot of excitement as well. And it really makes you, obviously you build up a social network, but it also learns you to make contact with other people in a different language that you're not used to speak. You know, it learns you, how to make contact with people, also just, you know, have non-formal conversations. For me, myself also, because I went there on my own, you also develop yourself in a way that I would say you never do when you just stay at home in your normal, in your standard environment. Also, you get in contact with different cultures. I mean, people from all over the world were in Newcastle. So no, I would advise everybody to do it. I'm very happy that I did it also because I ended up in an international company like Huntsman. So you always already have that experience in how to, work with people from different nationalities.
We got a question from Haramun Marciarena, which is really interesting. Did you feel or experience any gender discrimination issue during your career? And what is your opinion about the work that must be done in relation to the gender gap?
Well, to be honest, I must say I never really felt any gender discrimination. I never did. And I must say, especially in my first two roles, most of my colleagues were male, but I never really experienced anything negative, and I never really experienced either from, I'm male, I'm female, that person is male, so no, I never really had any issues. But I think it already starts at after secondary school, when you choose STEM education, there are also always more male persons, I would say. Maybe in chemistry a little bit less, but no, no. And what was the second part of the question?
The second part is what you think is needed to must be done in relation to the gender gap, so how we can overcome this issue, especially in schools.
Yeah. I think there it's maybe really important to pay attention to applications that all involve chemistry, because, for example, within performance products, we also have a personal care department. And those people, they concentrate on making shampoos, making soaps, making body lotion, even lipstick, things like that. And I think that's maybe, that's maybe more attractive for women than for men. But I think it's important to relate it to applications in daily life that are interesting for everybody. And once it can be that it's an application that's maybe more interesting for boys, if you're talking about engineering, but then also look for the other examples that are maybe more interesting for girls, just to find the balance.
Okay. Okay, great. So we can move on with Daniel. You can still write your questions if you still have on the chat, and we will collect them and ask to Daniel or Petra, or we can ask them and try to find an answer to them. So Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay, and thanks for joining on this evening. So my name is Daniel Bose. I'm the Regional Talent Acquisition Manager within Huntsman for Europe, Middle East and Africa. So I work within the corporate functions HR team within Huntsman. And my responsibility really is focused on the recruitment across Europe. So Huntsman, as Petra said, is a global organization. We have around about 3,000 staff in Europe. So every year we generally recruit around about 300 to 400 new people into the company on an annual basis. The vast majority of those people are based in site operations roles or in technical R&D positions. So my responsibility is to manage that recruitment, to make sure that it's being managed effectively, to make sure we're getting the right talent in the business, both at an experienced level and also at an entry level as well. And particularly at an entry level, that involves managing the graduate intakes within Huntsman, and also the internships and apprenticeships as well. On top of that, then, my responsibility is also to brand Huntsman within the candidate market. So making sure that we're seen as an employer of choice within the the relevant countries and within the relevant industries, and also providing support to colleagues across the HR functions, whether that's in learning and development, whether that's in talent management, or whether it's local HR teams at one of our manufacturing sites. That's a bit of an introduction to me. In terms of the culture at Huntsman, I think this is something that's pretty interesting, even when you come in at an internship or an entry-level position within the organisation. One of the things that I would give advice to, certainly to graduates, would be not only to look at the role that you're applying for, but also the culture of the company that you're applying for. And I think the culture at Huntsman is a very dynamic culture. It's very focused on change management and adaptability. As Petra mentioned, we're a specialty chemicals business, and increasingly our chemistries are becoming more differentiated. We move further down the value chain as well, so divesting away from commodity markets. So it's a really interesting company certainly for a graduate to come into, because the exposure that they have is not only from a geographical or a global level, but it's also at a real technical level as well, and there's some really technical challenging roles for graduates and interns within Huntsman. Our culture is always focused on growth. We've grown exponentially in the 48 years that we've been formed. The vast majority of our growth tend to come through merger and acquisitions, but also through organic growth as well. And I think one of the interesting parts of Huntsman, particularly coming in as a graduate or an intern, is really being part of a global organisation and a matrix organisation. And I think that's something that people coming into the company really haven't experienced in the past. It's a really interesting level of experience for someone like that. I've also just noted some of our core values as well, and we've got Peter Huntsman there on the right-hand side, who's our chairman and CEO, just explaining one of those values. So I think it's really interesting for people, as I mentioned before, to look at the company, to look at the culture, as well as the opportunities. So in terms of Huntsman's graduate commitment or our entry-level commitment, we recognise that it's important to bring new talent into the organisation. This is a key part of our succession planning. If we look just at our regional head offices in Belgium, we generally recruit between 5 or 10 technical R&D profiles per year. However, there's a lot of opportunities for people with degrees in chemistry or chemical engineering to also be based at some of our manufacturing sites. And the key sites that we have are in the Netherlands, in Germany, UK, Switzerland and Italy. But we also have smaller manufacturing operations in nearly every country in Europe. So I think one of the interesting parts to share with students from this is also that a degree in chemistry may not necessarily mean that you have to work in an R&D environment. There's also an opportunity to work in a manufacturing environment. A lot of our sales and marketing professionals, they have degrees in chemistry and chemical engineering. So it's really that there are opportunities as well as in research and development, but also in some of the more commercial and operational functions within Huntsman. I put a bit of an overview just on the standard recruitment process for graduates and apprentices and interns. It's a very standard application process, which is led through our website, and all applications and opportunities are listed there. We go through a standard selection and assessment process, and generally at an entry level, we have online assessments that we ask candidates to complete as well. And then obviously moving through onto an offer and an onboarding. So pretty standard process for students and pretty standard process for our industry. I've also just noted at the bottom of the screen there just a a testimonial that we had from one of our recent students who joined us just last year. It was his first position in our Research and Development Centre in Belgium, and one of the areas he really wanted to highlight there was the diverse culture within the organisation from a technical and from a geographical perspective. So I think that's something really to share with the students as well. In terms of the skills profile, so as I said before, part of my role is really trying to identify the best talent and potential for Huntsman. So from doing that, we test a lot of the competencies that are required to recruit young graduates or young talents into the organisation. With us moving into an increasingly market-driven culture and much more technology pull, we look for people who have technical qualifications but really have strong competencies to work within the business. And some of those competencies are their ability to adapt, whether that's in a technical perspective or whether that's in a market or business perspective. High level of dynamism and commitment, strong communication skills, particularly as students will be working in cross-functional teams, in cross-geographical teams. It's really important that people are able to effectively communicate in those situations. A strong level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, which I think also relates into the communication piece, and really being able to be accountable and aware of their impact within the business as well, and particularly within the wider business. So I think that's some of the areas to share with students as well, is that it's not just a technical remit that we look for. It really is the competencies and the team fit and the cultural fit with the business as well. And I think that's it from me.
Okay, yes, thank you, Daniel. Your presentation was really interesting. We've got one question from one of our teachers. I think is a teacher, I don't know. He's writing from Brazil. He says in the question, in Brazil we have the petrochemical industry in a place designated to studies and tests of quality of fuel used in the cars. Do you own any industry for this petroleum qualification?
So I lost a little bit of the connection there, but it sounded like, is there a requirement for petroleum qualifications?
Yeah, if you have like any branch of the industry which is working in this area, like petroleum qualification.
Yeah. So there's the question I think was relating to petroleum engineering qualifications, and within Huntsman that's generally not a common qualification for us. Petroleum engineering or a degree or similar in that area is generally looked for within the upstream oil and gas sector. So I think if students have that background, they're probably more suited in that type of sector, that industry.
Okay. What advice would you give to students looking to enter in the petro or petrochemical sector?
I think really it's being aware of the opportunities. I think students really need to do a lot of research into the companies and the industries that they're looking at. There's a huge difference from a technical perspective between commodity chemicals and specialty chemicals, for example. There's a huge difference between upstream oil and gas and downstream manufacturing. So I think it's really having the teachers and the resources to look into that and really decide what is the area of petrochems or chemical manufacturing that interests them the most. And generally that just comes through research. It comes through them being proactive as well and seeking that information out. Okay, and
how can school partner with Huntsman. Can only university partner with Huntsman, or also schools, maybe high school, I imagine, can partner with Huntsman?
Yeah, absolutely. We have established relationships with universities, with high schools, with people who run apprenticeship schemes. So I think it depends on the location and how you want to commit, but essentially people can contact me. I'm the first point of contact in the company for those relationships, and then I can either manage the inquiry directly or I can refer you to the local HR teams.
Great. We just got another questions for you, and it's: your company offers training for graduates when they start working, if I understood well. How wide or deep is the training your company provides to graduates compared to the training provided by the universities?
Yeah, I think the experience that you have in a graduate program or as a graduate within Huntsman is obviously a lot more practical than you will get at university. There is structured onboarding and development programs in Huntsman which allow new hires or new graduates to gradually adapt and increase their level of responsibility and skills within the business. So yeah, we always manage new talent in a responsible manner. I think it's important that they get that exposure on a slow development track, and that's what we aim for.
Okay, great. So I think we are going to the end. We wanted to submit you a poll, which my colleague Dimitra will prepare and open to you right now. So the answer will be just quick because it will be just a yes or no. The question is, do you think that after the webinar you are more aware about STEM careers and studies in the petrochemical industry? Yes and no. And if you want to leave a comment on the chat, you're really welcome. So a few minutes to replying to the poll. Okay, so it looks like you've been really interested in the webinar. We have another question actually, which is: are you planning to expand to Eastern Europe? So maybe I think it's for Daniel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do currently have manufacturing sites in Eastern Europe. So we've got manufacturing sites in Poland, in Turkey. So we're already operating in those areas as well. So I think in terms of the future of Huntsman, there's huge growth potential, and we're seeing huge growth, particularly in Poland and Turkey. They're probably two of our fastest growing regions. So I fully expect that we continue to look for graduates and for continue to increase our headcount in those regions.
Great. Thank you very much for all the information that you have shared with us. So we are now at the end of our webinar. I would like to thank our speakers who gave us a very important information about the chemistry careers in the petrochemical industry. Many thanks to all of you for participating in the webinar today, and for the one who needs a certificate or who wants a certificate, you need to fill in our feedback survey, which my colleague Dimitra has just shared with you on the chat, by the 27th of November latest. The important thing is that you fill in the name that you used during the webinar so you can get the certificate at the end. As I said before, The diversity in STEM competition is still open, so you still have time to submit your resources or your activities until the 13th of November, so you still have some time to do it. So don't lose this chance, because the winner will be invited to a STEM Alliance event with special opportunities to attend workshop on innovative STEM education and STEM career guidance. STEM Alliance will organize and cover the winner's transportation and accommodation, so don't lose this chance. So that's it for today. The webinar will be available on the STEM Alliance website, so please check out the website for the updates. And I really want to thank all of you for participating. Have a good evening and bye.